So we're going to be talking about the darkest web and Trump's trade war. But before I do that, I'm just going to run off a few notes past you from the cyber crime, thinking about cybersecurity, that great course. I've already returned it and I got it back on time, so that's good. 2010, Google hacked by Chinese. Over 97% of computer chips are manufactured outside the US. There's no way to inspect all transcriptors and chips prior to installation. There are more of these produced each year than grains of rice. There's no way to know if they've been modified with malware prior to installation. He says turn off auto run on your computer. I don't know. I don't have a home computer hooked up. I think, that's the best thing to do, is not have a home computer hooked up. Go to the library or whatever, use public computers. Or university, they worry about the cybersecurity issues, and then you don't have to. Passwords. He suggested that you don't use your birthday ever, because your birthday can easily be found on the internet. And he suggests password safe. I'd never heard of these before this course. Identity Safe is put out by Norton, or LastPass is an internet-based one. They sound like a bad idea to me. I don't know why. Honestly, when I put in passwords on the internet, I know that people can track my, if I go to one website and then another and another, they can track where I've been. They can see what I've done. So why couldn't they see the password that I put in? I can't see how internet passwords are ever secure, honestly. But whatever. And a safe that's in the internet, it just sounds really quite ridiculous. But whatever. He said for passwords, pick out a favorite line from a movie, play, or book. And then use the first letter from the first 10 or 15 words from that line, right? And then every third letter or whatever. Just have something where you can remember which ones you've capitalized or what. And then last 4 digits from a phone number as a child or whatever. Just think of some number and throw in an asterisk, and don't make all passwords the same. Even if you think up a really good one, you can think up 2 really good ones or whatever. But he says definitely don't use password, because that's the most common password. So, whatever. Your phone or laptop can be hacked and used as a microphone by outsiders. The only way to protect yourself against this is to take the battery out of the phone. Interesting, hey? So if you have a cell phone and you wander around with that and you think you're having some private conversation, well, who knows who's listening in on it? Even though your phone is off, they could be using it as a microphone. Interesting, hey? So, because I know my cell phone, it's just sitting all the time. I don't hardly ever use it, honestly, but I should just get rid of it, I guess. TrueCrypt can be downloaded to store data from the hard drive, and I don't know why anyone would want to do that, honestly. Tor, you can look up torproject.org. Tor can be used by anyone who wants to be anonymous online. It encrypts your whatever while you're doing stuff, and it's he said it's an onion router used by government, hackers, etc. But honestly, both James and I think that this is a government project, this Tor, and neither one of us believe that you're actually anonymous while you're online, ever. So, I mean, if you think about it, computers, like laptops and stuff, they have a camera on them. So, who's looking in on it? You don't know. I mean, you didn't make the computer, unless you did. You know, my nephew he made his own computer while he was in high school, and I thought, wow, that's awesome and smart, you know, because you don't know what, if somebody else made something for you, just like food. I made James baked potato with gravy, and it's fat-free gravy, and because I make it differently than other people do, and with some parsley chopped up, fresh parsley on top. And I didn't make you a juice because I didn't figure you'd be done with the other one, and so I made you hot chocolate.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
I think I'll drink that later. I mean, if it's chocolate, it takes so long.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the darkest web first?
Yeah, there's not much to say. It really doesn't come recommended, darkest web. So it's about, what do they call it, the black web or something like that?
Yeah.
Dark web or whatever. And, you know, it's basically just, I don't know what its background is. Exploring every corner of the dark web. She spent the last 5 years. I think she's a journalist or something like that, and no, she's a lawyer, author, and freelance. Oh, she's a journalist based in Melbourne. That I presume is the one in Australia, and I'm going to put it there because I don't think it's.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of what you'd expect with a journalist, and I'm not speaking from outside of the so-called profession. I wasn't really a professional. I never drew any wages for it. I worked for a student newspaper at the University of Lethbridge. Some people I worked with, very nice people, I should say. All except one dude, and he was a crackpot left-winger, even back then. I hate to think what he's like now. I worked with one crackpot left-winger on that paper. It was quite good, but yeah, he was a syndicalist, anarchist. The other dude was, you know, like the kind of guy who was kind of like a crypto commie, I guess you'd call him. But it didn't, what I'd call him, not what you would call him. But I might even call that to him, call him that to his face now. Not that I'd want to see him, but.
You may as well hold that chocolate to keep your hands warm.
Yeah, it'll be okay. At any rate, what was I going to say? Yeah, so, yeah, she just kind of like, it's kind of like sensationalism and stuff like that. I don't think she really knows that much about what's going on. I mean, how do you really find out who's really running these shows or whatever, right? She's not like she's worked with the FBI on it or anything like that. So it's basically, they say it's so and so and such and such. And I guess she's kind of checked this stuff out, you know, on the internet or whatever. I don't know how a person does it, but at any rate, yeah, it's superficial, all that sort of stuff. You know, the interesting stuff is like who's running it, but how do you find out who's running it? The stuff itself is not terribly interesting.
Well, honestly, I can't imagine if you really wanted to find out things. I think that you could. I think, honestly, I think the governments, like when spilled some of my pumpkin trying to save this. When what's his name? Rosenzweig.
Yeah.
Yep. When he was talking about the government not knowing whether things were coming from China or Russia, you know, or sometimes they knew, but they didn't know who did. I think, you know, they know. I think they know all the time, and I don't think it's a big surprise to them. Honestly, maybe I'm just hoping that the governments actually employ competent people that know what they're doing. Unlike a lot of municipal governments,
They're hilarious. I don't know. You'd think there'd be more university graduates who
Yeah.
actually stayed awake during class
But it's
to hire out there.
I don't know. They hire their family or
Yeah, that's
something,
one of
and
the
then
big
they end up promoting according to in-house training or whatever, which. So they never knew anything, and then they
It's just
still
hilarious.
don't.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
continue to not know anything, and
It's just crazy.
but anyway,
Yeah. Well,
Not
sometimes they wouldn't
everyone's
even
that
get
way.
the training. I mean, like how many people got trained to become a certified? You know what? We're not going to say what, but and
even when they get it paid for.
they got paid to take it. You did that stuff and you paid for it and you actually passed it. There's an incentive, to. But I don't know. I knew a couple of guys. I'm not going to say all of them flunked out. A couple of guys.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
three
so
guys.
Trump's
I know.
trade war. You want to talk about that?
Trump's trade war. Yeah, like Donald Trump. Like there's lots of yellow left wingers walking around. Yeah, yellow personality. I should say. I'm not saying they're cowards. They're probably that too. But walking around. Donald Trump. He said this. And Donald Trump. He said that. I'm so much smarter than Donald Trump. Yeah, not really. So Donald Trump, I predicted he'd flub the economy, and he might still, and in royal fashion. But apparently, more than 30 years ago, he's complaining about the Japanese taking advantage of the Americans, and they were, American diplomats were saying, hey, what are you doing? This is during the Cold War. What are you doing? We're not putting any tariffs on your stuff coming into the United States, Hondas and stuff like that. But you're putting all sorts of tariffs on stuff coming in to Japan. That's not fair. And the Japanese would basically say, do you want us as allies in the Cold War? You'll do what we say. And the Americans said, yeah, we will, because we actually believe in fighting the Russians. The weird thing is you're on the front, Russia borders right on Japan. And, the Japanese go, we know, that we can take advantage of you. And they did, and they did, and they did. And so, like someone was saying, Japan's economy, it was in the documentary, has been in free fall since the end of the Cold War. They didn't correlate it with the end of the Cold War. They said something like the last 3 decades. It hasn't been in free fall, but it's basically been since the end of the Cold War. And the reason is, I suspect, I haven't actually looked at the stats, is that the Americans have said, okay, we won the Cold War. We did. You didn't, actually, you Japanese. And so now you're going to pay.
Yeah, well, the Americans were buying
sure.
rice from Japan, right?
No.
No?
The Japanese, this is one of the things, they insisted they be self-sufficient in terms of feeding their own.
Oh, so they weren't buying California rice. That's what happened.
Yeah,
Even though
I think the
California makes
stats
rice.
indicated that
It's not- I don't remember these things.
that California itself could have fed Japan, or kept it fed on rice, more cheaply than the Japanese did. But the Japanese are going, hey, you're sending rice in. Yeah, you can, but you're going to pay a huge tariff.
Yeah, so in any case, Japan was America's rent boy, whatever, just like Cuba was Russia's. So you have Japan right next to Russia, and you have Cuba right next to America, and they're both sitting back and laughing about it. Because Russia was buying sugar from Cuba,
buying
right? What
cane
do
sugar
they have
from
use for that? I mean,
because
they
one of
have
Russia's
sugar
biggest products is sugar beets.
Yeah.
So Fidel was now understand Japan wasn't playing around. They didn't have 2 options, whereas Cuba did, because Cuba had the Chinese. And it's like some flunky professor was saying to someone that I know, and this was relatively recently. Understand, you'll get all sorts of people saying, if Americans played their cards right, they could have had Fidel in their back pocket, if they hadn't been, doing the Bay of Pigs and stuff like that. the other option for Fidel was China. So here's this guy isn't a fake left winger. He's a fake Democrat. He's a commie, right? And he's a Maoist. He says, understand, Mao wasn't a typical communist. He was, he was a Maoist. And I mean, yeah, he was. You know, like he believed in peasant warfare. You know, like a strict communist doesn't believe in the peasants being the vanguard of the revolution. I've actually read the literature. They believe that workers are. Now, Lenin wasn't, strictly speaking, a communist, because he was saying, we're going to have our revolution of the workers and the peasants. Yeah, Marx would have just puked. So, but Mao comes along and says, hey, well, yeah, we're going to have a revolution of the peasants. And
So then all of a sudden, who's going to be a doctor?
Yeah,
right?
Well, you know, when you get that, it happened in Cambodia. Whoever that was, I've forgotten the name, he gets into power in Cambodia, and we're going to have our revolution of the peasants. We're going to evacuate Phnom Penh. I don't know if it was entire, but I gather it was entire. Just everyone in that city, their capital, out into the countryside. And that's why they say 2 million people died. And of course, you know, left-wingers going around saying the Americans were the allies of the Cambodians. Oh, weren't the Americans awful? You know, when the Vietnamese walked in there with a smaller population base left after the 2 million were lost, I don't know how many were left. I think it was maybe only 5 million people there originally. Hopefully it was higher. Don't quote me on that. And the Vietnamese apparently whacked 1 million. Yeah, maybe that's better, but not much better. So we just never have been told. You see, the Vietnamese protect. You know, we've seen the shells of the skulls left by the Khmer Rouge and stuff like that. I should be saying Kampuchea. Oh my gosh. Man,
Who
so
cares?
politically incorrect.
So anyway,
oh, there's lots of people who care. I don't think they're watching because
Trump's trade war is a frontline PBS documentary.
Yeah. So
it's
the deal
only
is
an hour long.
Yeah,
just
so
like
he's talking
all of their
about
other
the
ones.
same stuff that he was talking about Japan 30 years ago about China. And actually, I think he's right. You know, the Americans, what they've been saying is, geez, you know, like, what we can do is we can get these guys on board with globalization if they see the fruits of it. And so we'll let them do, ship their products in here. We'll pay the huge tariffs and stuff like that. And the Americans actually believe in this stuff. You look at the big water companies in the world, not just in the United States, they're all French. Evian, I'm not making it up.
No.
So they actually, you know, people are saying, they're just greedy, they ruled the world for their own greed. No, they actually believe. That's the traditional Republicans. They actually believe. And, you know, if you're a capitalist from somewhere else, they set up the rules to favor capitalists, but they'll let other companies, other capitalists from other countries do their thing. So it's just that way. They'll be going around saying, the Bush family wants to buy all the water in Bolivia or something like that. And I'm going, yeah, but if they were really hammering down on people, Evian wouldn't be selling bottled water here. And,
you're
the
right.
other one,
Yeah.
you know?
Anyway, so it comes recommended?
You can get some, it's the PBS thing, it's not that good, but you get some basic stuff that you can draw your own